Bach Invention number 6 in E major. This is a gentle piece. It's percolating along in the most beautiful dialogue between the two voices, and it's a splendid example of the use of invertible counterpoint, which means that the voices switch. The soprano and the bass have their parts, and then they trade places and do the very same parts, and it works. So Bach is showing his expertise with how to do invertible counterpoint. He's also teaching many other things in this piece, starting with, in the key of E major, the scale. He begins with the subject in the bottom part. I'm going to call it the bass. That's always in this piece played with the left hand. And the soprano, the right hand, begins with the counter subject. So playing those as separate parts, let's listen to what they sound like. This is a 4-measure phrase in 3/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the soprano answers it the very next measure, identically except an octave higher. Lovely, isn't it? Right at the top, when he gets to the closing E, a little melodic line, and punctuated with the broken E octave of the tonic. The counter subject. The two hands begin at the distance of 2 octaves, both on the E's, both with the 5th fingers on the E's. And this is what the counter subject sounds like. It's different by 3 things. Number 1, it's syncopated. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. It's altered. Instead of coming with the regular scale notes, he slips in a D natural right there. And it ends with dancing 30-second notes skipping along. And of course that was a descending line. So those 30-second notes to me define especially the joyful and lilting character of this piece. And that's one of the first things we ask ourselves, what is the character of the piece? I'll just tell you up front here that this is in ternary form, A, B, A. And the B section is quite a contrast in the key it's in, and the emotional landscapes that we explore are not at all carefree and sunbathed as I hear the opening A section and the second A section that comes back. I like to practice these parts as unisons like this so that you really hear and feel in the fingers that they are absolutely identical. So playing them both on the beats and the other parts. So what we have is the staggering of the arms, the body. It's a lovely thing to play. It's so beautiful. What I just played was the notes as it would sound if they were both written on the beats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But by staggering, we have a whole different feel. Came together for the first 4 measures. For the repetition, since the parts flipped, the direction of the lines is reversed as well. So now the hands go away from each other. This is measure 5. And that closes our opening statement. 4 measures and the repetition 4 measures with invertible counterpoint. Isn't that gorgeous? Now I'm going to show you what I'm looking at. And this is always such an honor and a treat for me to be able to show these. This is a brand new engraving that I just finished. It's on the 11-inch by 17-inch horizontal landscape. And you can see the opening System 1, which is what this is. Here's System 2, and here is System 3. This is the entire A section of 20 measures. And I put colors in, and you get these colors in another supply. I put the subject in red. The subject is always ascending on the E major scale. And the counter subject in blue is always descending. Now, after they've had a chance to do their equal statements of both the subject and the counter subject, they branch off. And we have this marvelous leap. Let me take the very last measure 8 here. Ending on the tonic E, and out of nowhere, this beautiful 10th plus 2 octaves. Now notice that parts are coming together. And from that top G sharp, let's do that one more time. Soprano G sharp. Drops down a step and repeats on the F sharp. That's a sequence when the material repeats exactly, either down a step or up a step most of the time. Sometimes it can be up a third or down a third. But this is stepwise sequence. And then now we have a rising 7th in the soprano. Hands coming together, still staggered. And landing on this. That's a 10th, F sharp to A sharp. We don't have an A sharp in E major. So this tells us that we're going somewhere else. And 5, 1. Notice I end on the 2 B's with the 5th fingers, an octave apart. And we have modulated to B major to the dominant. And that is a 3-measure phrase to close the A section, and it sounds like this, all built on the 32nd rhythmic motive. Up and down. Left hand skipping. Isn't that fun? It's beautiful. It makes me happy. It makes me light just to feel and hear and play these skips. The soprano goes up the B major triad and down. Simple, but so beautiful. I think the thing of this piece that I love so much is the simplicity of it. Looking at this first page again, I'll just show you that we had our sequence here, the repeating down a step, the parts. Now with this A sharp, right here in that measure 16, it's preceded by a clever descending B major scale in the soprano. Up that 7th that went up, leaped up to G sharp, comes down the notes of the B major scale. And it resolves to here. Absolutely beautiful. The hidden scale melody there. I'm going to play it one more time, starting measure 9, so you can appreciate the blocked chords now that I'm going to do to show you what this underlying foundational harmonic structure is of this. The supporting tonalities are really this. Aren't those gorgeous chords? Major 7 chords. And then tells a story. chart. This, by the way, your version, I always show this, your working copy on the 3 pages comes like this, plain black and white. Lots and lots of space here to make markings. And what I particularly love about this engraving, being ABA form, which is the only invention that is in a full repetition of the A section material, 20 measures, again, comes back. I was able to get the first section A on this page 1, the section B that's coming up, I got all on page 2, and the repetition of material I got all on page 3. This is extremely valuable. If you want to get your own chart of this, you can get them through my website, sallychristianmusic.com, as digital downloads. And you get the 3-page working copy and also a satellite view in black and white. And the pièce de résistance is the color satellite structural analysis, which is the entire piece on 2 vertical pages. I print these on cardstock. And this is going to be the most helpful roadmap for you in seeing the absolute beauty and symmetry of this piece. The logic, the balance. We have the A section, which is what I just finished playing. And notice at the end of this, I have this 8. That means there are 8 measures in System 1. There are 9 measures in that modulatory line, taking us to B major. And it's a 3-measure closing phrase. The return of the A section, you can see, is identical material, except everything is inverted. The bass began the piece with the ascending E major scale, and now here the soprano begins the return of the A section. So these are absolutely inverted. The other difference, besides being inverted, over here, is the end of that 4-measure phrase, which had the da-da-da, 30-second rhythmic motive, only in the counter subject. Now both parts get to join with that delightful skipping rhythmic motive. So you have both 30 seconds to close this 4-measure phrase, both 30 seconds to close that. So being able to compare these two at a glance, it's very helpful. Notice then, with this material here, I split this 9-measure phrase into 2 systems. I did that for a reason, because this to me was the defining moment in the piece, and I found this a little bit trickier. Even though we have 20 measures here and 20 measures here, the material is a little bit different, and I wanted to really call attention to that and not tag it on over here like this one is. Notice also the lines coming together. These dashed lines indicate the direction of the melodies coming together here. And because the parts invert on the second A section, they go the opposite direction, away from each other. The direction of the lines is so important. There's so much beauty in them. And when a line reaches up, it has an emotional meaning to it. When a line comes back down, it's more inward many times. So I like to pay attention to that too, as an indication of how to think of the piece, interpret the piece. So now with the B section, we're going to go to our working copy, and we're in the dominant B major. We have exactly the opening material of subject and counter subject, except now in the dominant. It starts like this in measure 21. This time, instead of the hands being 2 octaves apart, it starts on the unison. Very interesting. Both thumbs. Remember, the first time both 5th fingers started? This time both thumbs start on the B. Very interesting. And it sounds like this. Soprano gets the subject, ascending subject, on the B major scale. And the bass gets the counter subject. 3 octaves apart, coming back together. And that finishes the same material of the complete 4-measure statement and inverted. Now that very end there, the finish of that counter subject has an extraordinary function. It's double duty. It finishes the counter subject exactly in its original form, but it also begins the developmental material, which is all built on the upbeat of the 2 32nd notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. And that is what we hear as a common element, all beginning on 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. And I put these in orange boxes so you could see the regularity. These are all beginning new little phrases. But most important, we have done an unprepared modulation from B major to the relative minor without any warning. Let's take the last measure of the close of the B major. We are to G sharp minor, just like that. And 1, and 1, and 1, and 1. Now it gets very interesting chromatically up to this. Everything's staggered still. Now the repetition, this is a sequence coming down. Feel the sadness of this. Now right here, the rhythm changes. The accents, the agogic accents change, and we go into a hemiola. Instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, we have 1, 1, 1, 1. So everything goes into 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's still in 3/8 time, but it feels like it has shifted to a different meter. Bach likes to do this. He did it in the Invention number 4 as well, for his long ascending 9-measure phrase. This is a 10-measure phrase, so it's the most tense and complicated and dense part of the piece. It takes a lot of analyzing and working on it. Starting with the G sharp minor section, now we're going to go into a little more detail. I'd like to take the left hand alone here, playing those blocked chords. So that didn't move anywhere, did it? I mean, it's a G sharp minor. That's really an inversion of the 5th of G sharp minor. 1, 5, 1, 5. And then this B sharp in measure 33. This is the 10-measure finish of the B section. And boy, does he give us a lot here. This to me is so interesting. Let's listen to the parts. By itself, and I highly recommend, when I was learning this piece, I have to learn all of these and memorize them in order to give the lessons. I should say I get to, because my belief is, and people many times ask, why do we have to memorize our pieces in this art form with solo classical piano music? And my answer is, if it isn't memorized, you don't know it well enough. It's easy to sight read, but you're going to miss so many of the details that only come out with the hard work and the commitment of getting it memorized. So when I was working on memorizing this section, I kept getting stuck in here when I started right here at measure 29. If I just started here, it was hard for me, but starting here with the pickup of these two notes that I call link notes at the end of measure 28 that do the double duty, then everything made sense and I saw the rhythmic pattern. Well, and let's take that right hand alone and count 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. Whole step for these, whole step for these, and half step for those. And that's tricky. Now going on with the sopranos, I love this moment. Yeah, that's a diminished sounding, isn't it? Up a third, step. I'm exaggerating here. There's so much tension in here. I hear this as declamatory. So I'm going to put everything together now on this development section, which is 14 measures long, with the pickup to measure 29. Just as quickly as we heard the G sharp minor upon us, we leave it. It reminds me of one of those summer thunderstorms when the rains come all of a sudden and you think, oh my gosh, my outdoor garden party's ruined. And then it leaves just as quickly and you can have your party. And we do have our party. We come back right like this, a descending G sharp minor triad. Remember, the A section ended, and this ends. Now with these, we're right back to E major, like that. Page 3. So that's tricky. How strange that sounds, doesn't it? Looking at your structural analysis here. This structural analysis does split the development section. It's the only way I could get it on the 2 pages. That starts right here, the G sharp minor section, with the link notes here that do double duty. And here is your 10 measure phrase, ending with the hemiolos, and the 4-5-1 cadence in G sharp minor, C sharp, D sharp, and G sharp. I do want to point out one more thing. I have notes circled here. Notice that I have the phrases. Here's sequence written, this 2 measure phrase here, Yapa, beginning on the 2nd 16th. Second 16th. Downbeat. See how it changes when it's on the downbeat as opposed to 1/16 after the beat? These things make a big difference because everything lifts when a yappa da 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 da. You can even take a little breath there. And I recommend singing it like that. Get the whole line, get your breath into it. When you can sing it and phrase it like a singer and then put that into your piano playing, we transcend the instrument. We turn it into what every instrument is, and that's singing from the heart with our own unique voice that cannot be duplicated. We are all unique and perfect creatures. expressing this music with the way only we can express it, I wanted to show you, I was wanting to point out in that last part of the development section that this comes together, the lines. Listen, this is the barest outline. Do you hear the patterns? I found that remarkable. And my music, when I play it like that, these are all the ways I like to study, to see as many hidden patterns as I can. Let me sing these circled notes. B sharp, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That second beat resolves. And then the A sharp, 1, 2, 3. So it's really this. Drop to A sharp to B. F double sharp to G sharp. And my students ask me, well, why does he write F double sharp? If it's a white key G, why doesn't he just write G? Make it easy for me. Well, he can't if he wants it to spell dissonance and resolution with two different pitches, two different note names. If it's G and G, that's the same note. It has to be a different note. And that's why it's F double sharp resolving to G sharp. That's the basic outline of that whole section. But you don't really hear it so clearly as that when you put everybody together. I love this moment. Now we can go to our A section return. Remember? Now we know we're going to have double 30 seconds. It's an embellishment for the last time, so it's a little different. 3 octaves apart, coming together. 16th. And notice what's so great when you invert the parts. First, there are tenths. And when you switch those parts, they become sixths. That's remarkable. And that always happens with inversions, when you invert the parts. It's just extraordinary how it works. Doesn't it make you wonder about the overall magic of patterns and harmonies and intervals? It's like it's a special language where there's logic and beauty and perfection. It's just so wonderful, the framework for us to be able to live into this and appreciate it and savor the beauties. So coming with those sixths now to close the final statements of counter subject, subject, and counter subject. Let's play that one more time. Coming together. Now we're going off. The hands going. Listen to them pulling apart. Climbing up. Drop down a step. It's a sequence, just like the first time, except going in the opposite direction. Now here's the final. Surprise! There's the upward seventh. What's my bass? There was a natural. Well, of course it has to be the E major scale. So he's done exactly the same thing. And I just so love to be able to do this with these loose leaf sheets that I have. It's just wonderful to be able to do this. And I can take the second system here where I had the descending B major scale in the soprano as modulatory to the dominant, And we can see then, because the parts invert, and we're really in home here, E major. We don't leave E major for the whole last page of this engraving. This A section doesn't leave. So it's not really modulating here with this descending E major scale. It's just stating, yes, we are still in E major. It's just gorgeous. Now, what is different is this leap. What happens to the soprano here? This is the moment, the defining moment of the piece. I'm going to play the soprano alone here, starting measure 51, with the sequence starting on E. So beautiful. If we block those chords, oh, it's gorgeous. Now it changes. Here it is. Oh, the sixth, and it hangs and falls. And disappears. Let's put the hands together there. Sequence. Here's your last 5-measure phrase. Scale and the bass. 10th. And that's going to resolve to here. That's the last bit of dissonance. Tension. And coming together. And another third. 10th. Third and 10th is interchangeable. He uses 10ths all over the piece. Everywhere there are 10ths. Here's a 10th. Here's a 10th. 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 So follow those two. They're beautiful. 10th is just one of the most wonderful intervals because it is harmonious. So that pretty much concludes this lesson. This 3-measure closing phrase has the same broken full chord, and I want to show you what I did in my chart. I put in red the close of page 2 here has the same broken. The close of page 1 has the same. And the final close, page 3, as you can hear in your ears already. Isn't that great? I just couldn't believe that. Finding patterns. You know, the thing about these inventions is they are a metaphor for a really wonderful relationship where two people are speaking to each other with independent and distinct parts, but equally valuable parts. And it reminds me of the saying that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And the separate parts are beautiful, but when you put them together like this, and when you make them so integral, integrated in the physicality of playing it in this piece, with all of the syncopations throughout the entire piece, they are tied together, yoked together, traveling in parallel paths through all of the syncopations. It's just a miracle of a piece. I highly recommend that you learn this one. It's a delight to play. And the last thing I just read recently, George Washington Carver, who did the peanut plantations, said, "When you love something, it whispers to you." He used to look at the peanut plants and they would speak to him, and he had a communication with them and loved them and they loved him. And that's how this piece is. You can speak to it and it will speak to you. And there's a reciprocity and a love because it whispers to you and you sing back to it. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful for you.